Welcome to Lip Service for Contractors. Here you'll learn what moves the needle in your business. With your hosts, Brigham, the deep thinker, Josh, the $100 million contractor, Zach, the confused millennial, Laura, the foreigner. Lip service. It's not about dictatorship. It's about leadership. It's not about duplication. It's about innovation. It's not about stuff. It's about your people. Strap in and get ready for some lip service.
And we are back with another episode of Lip Service for Contractors, you guys. We've got a fantastic episode for you today. It is all about goal setting. You know that thing that you know is important, but you never do? Well, today we're going to change all of that and much, much more in 60 seconds.
Chances are you love what you're hearing on Lip Service for Contractors. And if you want to go deeper, have an actionable playbook, or just want to learn from some of the most successful and profitable contractors in the industry, check out Clover Marketing from Josh and Laura. They give away free, amazing information, tools, SOPs, scripts, and processes that help their family business grow to over 140 million. And those same tools have helped other contractors in the industry blow up their business and grow an average of 20% every single year. Check out growwithclover.com/free gifts. They update the free gift section all the time, so make sure you keep coming back.
Power Selling Pros is the customer service coaching company for contractors. Their one-on-one coaching for CSRs helps contractors book at least 85% of their calls and wow more customers. And their group training for technicians helps you create a better buying experience in the home and close more sales. Visit powersellingpros.com to learn more about how you can make more money with their coaching programs.
All right, welcome back. Lip Service for Contractors, you guys. It is all about goal setting. Who wants to start us off today?
Set some goals.
Yeah, let's set a goal to start this episode out right. Great plan. Really great plan. Now, here's the thing about goal setting is that everybody knows they should do it, right? Or at least they've been told they should do it. It's kind of like the same thing that happens when you say, hey, we're on the business instead of in it. And we're like, yeah, okay, we're going to do that. We're going to do that one day. Or you write it down, right? You write it down and then you lose it. So here's the thing about goal setting. If it's not constantly in front of your face, it's going to be really, really hard to get it done. Crazy. We've talked about focus on this podcast before, right? The importance of staying focused and even being obsessed, right? Remember how we use the word obsessed? Great episode. Maybe during the break we can find it and tell you about it. But here's the thing: you've got to have specific, and I don't like calling them goals even. I don't know if you guys have heard of Jason Hewitt, but Jason Hewitt wrote a book called The Promise. All right. So the difficulty about goals is that it's kind of a word that's been overused. Oh man, you got to set goals, right? But promise, that's different. You see, you're making promises to yourself. It's a promise, right? And you don't want to lie to yourself. You don't want to let yourself down, so maybe the way that we start off is talk about, regardless of what you call it, right? What is it and why is it so important? And how do we make it more of a priority in our lives? What do you guys think?
I've just looked up stats, and I kind of heard these stats before, but I didn't know exactly the stat, so I didn't want to say the wrong stat. This is kind of sad. Okay, ready for this? Less than 3% of Americans have written their goals down. Only 8% of people actually achieve their goals. Another science article says 92% of people don't achieve their goals. So,
same stat.
Yeah, it's 92%. So that's a pretty consistent stat. 92% of people don't achieve their goals. So that's not, there's clearly problems in not just goal setting, but people don't know how to goal set. I think that's a huge problem, which we can tackle into like the how of setting goals. Because if the how is incorrect, you're setting yourself up for failure. Or a lot of people set goals and they have absolutely no intention of accomplishing the goals or even working toward those goals. It's like something that makes them feel good.
Yeah, I think personally, whenever I don't achieve my goals, which I'm not going to talk about how often that is, but Whenever I
Never.
don't, whenever I don't achieve my goals.
Just haven't yet. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. See, that's what the stat's missing. How many haven't it yet? I tend to kind of, I guess, blame it, I'll say, or chalk it up to the fact that my goal setting methods are too complicated. I think that
You have a complicated goal setting method,
I
though.
think that, well,
But you do accomplish goals.
Life is so chaotic, right?
True.
Life is, let me tell you something I read the other day, and I want to hear your guys' response to this. This guy says, planning is pretty useless. What tends to dominate life are a small number of black swan events. And a black swan event is something that's unexpected. That's just a fancy name for it. Events in both directions, positive and negative. Expose yourself to the upside of good events. Deal with the downside of the bad events. But if your life becomes too regimented and non-chaotic, it doesn't have any actual life to it to be, at all, if it's too regimented.
I mean, I think if you're planning,
I don't know if I
every
agree with that,
second of
but
your life, like I agree, but like I don't think most people are doing that, right? Like spontaneity is a thing, right? But that's not even what we're talking about, really, right? We're talking about goals or promises in Brigham's case, right? They're not like I promised myself or I have a goal to do this thing in the next 15 minutes. That's not what we're talking about. That's like over regimenting, right? I
don't-
personally, go ahead.
I don't think Zach is. I think that's something that is. I actually do believe that that's why some people choose to not accomplish their goals, because it means sacrificing a level of freedom. They don't, it's like oftentimes to achieve a goal, there has to be a certain level of discipline. And if you want a certain level of discipline, you are sacrificing some element of your freedom. So I actually think that now most people don't set goals, so it's not even a problem to begin with. But
Or
for the
real
goals,
Or
for
at
the
least
goal
real
setter,
goals.
I can totally see that. Me personally, I used to be like so driven by like having habits and sticking to them, and my day was all mapped out. I'm like, that was miserable. But I think the majority of people don't set goals, so it's not a problem. But for those aggressive goal setters, like if we need to study our audience more, but if it was like hyper type A goal setters, I would say, yeah, let's dissect that, because I could for sure see that becoming a problem. But the sad part is most people don't set goals.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. I think there is great power in writing down a goal or a promise and looking at it every day. And let me give you an example of that. Nelson Mandela. What did he read every morning while he was in prison? Are you guys familiar with Invictus?
Mm-hmm.
It's a poem written by William Ernest Henley. I'll read it to you guys real quick. This is what he read every morning while he was in prison for years and years and years. So here's how it goes. It says, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I think whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud under the the bludgeonings of change. My head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Mm-hmm.
Super powerful poem that kept Nelson Mandela motivated until he was set free. And just look at all the good he did as soon as he was set free. That's the power of keeping your goals in front of you on a daily basis. And of course, it's interesting how we're more focused on our goals in difficult times, but it's not as easy in times of ease. I wonder why that is.
I think goals are forward thinking things. Let's start with the basics. Like, we're all on the same page. You should be setting goals. I think most people are, but I think it'd be valuable for other people to understand. Like, now we all have different types of goals. Like, we have personal goals, we have business goals. Like, how do you guys set your goals? Like, I could go through mine, but I know we all have different techniques to doing this, right? And then what we should talk about too, like how do we get in front of people? Like I know people who write on cards and carry it in their pockets. That's not me, but I do regularly look at goals, right? I have it up on my wall. Like there's ways of doing this. Let's talk about how we pick goals to start.
It's this is a fascinating conversation because goal setters are like they tend to love their method and they tend to not like others. Like you see people who love vision boards and other people are like, that's the biggest load of rubbish ever. So yeah, there's so many different methods, and I feel
Laura used to have a vision board, and
I totally still see the value, because when I look at something that when you have an emotional connection to something, it drives a greater desire to have that thing. And if you look at an image that has an association of what you want, you're more deeply motivated to have it. It's so again, there's, and the thing is, all these theories are backed some way or another. Right. They either resonate with you or you don't. So I'd like to preface, before we go down this potential rabbit hole, choose a method that works for you. But as a listener now, I would love to set a goal for you to choose a method of setting goals post this podcast, or else research after this podcast. But having a good goal setting method is key. If you don't set goals, you're essentially kind of okay with whatever happens.
Yeah, it's a lot like tracking. We talk about tracking a lot. Like if you don't set a number, like, and I'll use this as a business example, and there's many types of goals. You should not be setting only business goals. But like if you don't set a revenue goal for the month, then any number is good enough. And that's just not a great way to live your life. You're not motivated, you're not driven, you don't even know where you're at necessarily, right? Goals are the same way. Like I think, me and Laura, especially, the biggest thing in our life is growth. I know if I'm growing every single day in some way, kind of everything else will figure itself out. So like, I think it's really important to be driving towards something. Otherwise, can you not do that? Of course you can. In fact, that's what most people do, but most people aren't all that happy and aren't all that successful and aren't in the best position. And like, I don't want to be like the 90%. I want to be the best version I could be. And the only way to do that is to reach. And the only way to reach is to have something to reach for.
Mm-hmm. And I think amid reaching, it's also important that everybody's heard of the method, the SMART goal setting technique. And yeah, maybe it's outdated to a point, but ultimately it means, you've got to have an element of like, it stretches you, but it's got to be, it can't be just off the wall ridiculous that it's like, I don't know, it's like, so say for instance, if you're,
so I know what the SMART goal technique, but I've got a feeling a lot of listeners don't. So why don't you just go through it?
Yeah. So the SMART technique, it stands for, so S, specific, M, measurable, A, attainable or relevant, and T, time bound. So specific is, exactly what your goal is. Measurable, you can measure and track your goal. Attainable, your goal is realistic and you can achieve it. Relevant, your goal is exciting and meaningful to you. And time bound, you have a clear deadline for your goal. So to break down why each of those are important is, if it's not specific, so if it's like lose weight, if it's lose weight, tomorrow you could be down a pound and then that's your goal accomplished, when typically no one would be satisfied with that who actually has a goal to lose weight. Then so that's the importance of it being measurable, like exactly what is success. So what number on the scale would be success to you? And again, weight is very controversial because it's so ambiguous, but again, just as an example. And then attainable, like you can't go say, okay, next week I'm going to have 50 pounds lost. That's just like off the wall crazy. So again, that would not be attainable. So it must be attainable. And then relevant, it must mean something to you. Like we spoke about the importance of having a why, like heck, again, back to the weight thing, because we're just using that example. If it means you losing weight, so you're alive and well for your kids, again, it's relevant. It means something to you. And then time bound, if you don't have a deadline, heck, you've all your life to accomplish it. And it's like urgency, when you're selling to your customers.
It'll take longer than that.
Totally. Parkinson's law is another thing. If you look that up, Parkinson's law, use the amount of time available to you. So yeah, give yourself 10 years and you'll take 10 years, or else you'll become so lackadaisy about it that you mightn't even accomplish it at all. So that's the SMART method is actually, it's pretty solid. It means that you're setting goals in a wise way. And it's actually been around since 1981. and it's still used like in organizations all over the world. So, yep.
Yeah, me and Laura do this, and we actually had a meeting with our entire team, and we went over each other's goals. So we created personal goals, business goals, um, learning goals, growth goals, kind of across the board. We put together several different categories, and we had the whole team write out goals. Like nothing was crazy, nothing was too crazy, nothing was too audacious. You could write whatever you want, and we all talked about a team and how we could help each other. And I think just like for me, like I'm not going to carry a card in my pocket. I think that's a great technique. It is. You could also do like notifications on your phone where it notifies you every day. You could use a randomizer so it comes at random times during the day. I think that's really cool. It's just not me. Like I don't want to be bugged by a text message in the middle of a call reminding me of my goal. I've tried that. It's just not my thing. But what I do is, guess what? I use reporting. I have a sheet that I pull up all the time, and I think it's really important to realize like some goals are not meant to be achieved next week, but doesn't mean you can't be working towards them. So we have a goal list of about 100 things each, and I try to keep it around 100 things. So as I achieve things, I add different things, and they could be something as travel goals or whatever, right? Um, and I'm always actively working on at least a half a dozen. Like today, I'm doing something that long term helps me achieve that goal. And that could be, if I want to spend a month in Italy, like our goal is to spend a month in Italy this year, that's be financially set up. That means we hire the VA to do a bunch of research for us and set us up. That means we pick the neighborhood that we're going to live in, which is going to be Florence, and we have a specific neighborhood. And that means we, are looking up housing costs and Airbnb it once everything opens up, hopefully sometime soon. Um, but it doesn't mean you have to accomplish it right away, right? Because it's not realistic right now. Italy's shut down. But doesn't mean we can't be making progress. And I think progress in some ways is almost as good. It's like losing weight. Yeah, losing weight's controversial, but what's really easy is just working out every day or weighing yourself every day. Those are actionable goals that you can be working towards, even if you're not losing that 30 pounds, tomorrow. I don't know if that helps or not.
Agreed. It's back to, it's like, and again, there's got to be an element of how, and I think that's where the achievable thing comes in. If you're trying to figure out how it's achievable, all you got to do is figure out how. Like there's no way, there's no way you're going to lose 50 pounds. Like what the heck is that? How? Like, I don't know, cut off your 2 legs or something. It's like, it's just, it's got to think
that
about
would work.
Hey, whatever it takes.
Totally.
And that's how you lose 50 pounds in a day. You said it was impossible.
Right.
I think how there's goals. There are goals that have specific outcomes. For example, I recently learned this from this guy named Sam Parr. So for financial goals, I now have in my bank account, I actually changed the name of my bank account to the dollar amount that I want in there so I can retire. So that every time I open my bank account, it has the goal, like basically what I'm going for, and then my current balance underneath it, right? Because that's the name of it. And that's a specific outcome I'm going for. But then there's
that would demoralize.
Awesome.
That would demoralize me, because where I want to be is like so huge for me personally that would demoralize me. But
just make more money. Just make more money.
That's the thing. It's like I don't want. It really does. It is motivating, right? Because every day you look at it, you're like, all right, what am I going to do today to get that much closer to the goal? Right?
That's the fascinating part of this conversation. It differs for everybody. If I looked at that, I would immediately be anxious. I'd be like, oh my God, I don't have anything figured out.
Because I can kind of visualize what it will look like when that number is actually in there now, right? Like
perfect, though. It works for you.
And so it's all relative. I see the value to that, but like if I were doing that, I would do like, well, I want the balance to be at the end of the year. So then I could make it like realistic.
Me too. Right?
Because let's say I want to retire with, I don't know, $10 million. I want to retire with $10 million in the bank account. Like, I don't have $10 million in the bank account just sitting right now. Like, that seems unrealistic. But could I get to, 500,000 by the end of the year? I mean, I could wrap my head around that more, Yeah.
Yep.
So that brings up an interesting point. Something I wanted to ask about. At the end of SMART goals, you have time bound, right?
Uh-huh.
And I see time bound for lots of people who, if they don't put a time limit on it, they're never going to get there. They're going to procrastinate forever.
Uh-huh.
But why does everyone need to have time bound goals? I can see lots of people in life who they hit their goals as quickly as possible. And so they're like, I'm not going to put a time limit on it. I'm just going for it. Right. Like I'm going to try to get there as quickly as I can.
Because you can't do that with every goal. It helps you prioritize.
I also think there's a huge, huge element to goal setting. A huge element to goal setting is self-awareness. Huge. You got to know who the kind of person you are, what motivates you. Like for your method, it makes you super motivated. It makes me super anxious. For another person, they need an end goal because they'll procrastinate till the day's long. Another person, if they have an end goal and it's too long, they get lazy. They do well at that time crunch. It's a self-awareness thing.
I have a friend who owns a software company, and exactly as Zach just described, he's one of those individuals where he doesn't want to put a time limit on it because he feels like the time or the date that he has to achieve it will delay his progress because he's going to get it done now. And what's crazy about this guy is that amazingly, he reminds me of Steve Jobs in that he's not totally great with people, but he sees like this vision that's just way out there, and he's crushing it, right? So I can see where Zach's coming from when it comes to some people. I know those people that just don't want to put a time limit on it because they're going to be better than that, regardless of the time, right? And so I wonder if Zach would be, and I'm a little different. I kind of like what Zach does with throwing that dollar figure in his bank account. And look, he may not accomplish it tomorrow, but if he stays focused on that, it's probably going to happen.
Totally.
It's personalities, right? We talk about this all the time. Some people will say, hey, you need like a 10-year plan. It's like, no, I never plan more than a year out. Like most time, like I plan no more than a month out for the vast majority of things, which is why I have a list of 100 goals and I'm only actively working on 6 because I'm going to get those 6 done within a month. Like, and I would make the argument too, right? Like everybody's different and you shouldn't build systems for the exceptional. Like if you are amazing at tackling goals, then maybe timelines aren't the necessity for you. But most people aren't. So 99% fall into it, 1% don't. And even with your buddy, I would make the argument that if he doesn't like putting timelines because it delays him too long, then he's putting the timelines out too far. Or it frustrates him. He's like, well, I'm going to get this done before then. And he gets it done faster than he would if he didn't put a timeline.
So either way, it's a motivated.
Either way, it's a win.
Yeah. So just to give you an example, for Power Selling Pros, we had a goal of 700 trainees, right? And we've had things that got in the way of that number. We've plateaued a few years. I love it when I say plateau because everybody can relate to that, right? Oh my gosh, I could totally relate to that, which is great. That's just part of life. But we stayed focused on it. And it was interesting because 700 was like 300. When we hit 300 trainees, we hit 300 trainees for 3 years straight. And by the third year, I was so frustrated, right? And then when we hit 700 trainees, we had to hit it again about 3 years in a row before we could get past it. I mean, and really feel comfortable that we're past it. Of course, now the goal is 1,000 trainees. So having a deadline makes a lot of sense, but even if you miss the deadline, doesn't mean you should stop or quit or give up, right? You keep going. You keep going, you keep pushing forward, and you make it happen.
Brigham makes a good point. And now I want to give you guys thoughts on this. You talked about revenue-based goals earlier, right, Josh?
Yeah.
Do you worry that if a company's primary goals are based on revenue, that will take people's focus away from the larger mission or the larger purpose of the organization?
You know, the thing that's bigger than any one individual that should be their why behind what they do. I think I know where Zach's coming from.
Like if the focus is we're going to get to $1 million in this year, or we're going to get to $2 million this year, and everyone's dead set on let's get to $2 million. Then they get there and it's like, okay, great, we did it. Now what? Can a revenue goal distract from the greater purpose?
Then you move the goal line. Like, so no.
It's
If it's achieved or done poorly, of course it can, just like anything else. But to understand, like if you're an HVAC company, right, and you've been stuck at 6 million for 4 years, and you want to do 8 million or 7 million or 10 million, whatever it does, like setting that goal and driving toward it, you know how you achieve that goal? You achieve that goal by doing better marketing, by providing better service, by cross-selling, upselling more, by paying your team members more, by helping your team members achieve their goals. Like these are all directly related. Now, you can also be a terrible business owner and like, yeah, I'll make a lot more money, but screw my team members. But that's not has nothing to do with the goals that you set.
Mhm. I think neither. I think they can't be seen as separate things. Like the mindset has to be, yes, yes, we are driven by a certain. We're working toward a certain revenue goal because when we hit this revenue goal, we have served more customers. If that's the overall vision, it's not like that's the how. It's serving more people, and then the higher the revenue, it's a direct reflection of having served more people. If that's the goal of a HVAC company, give the best possible service to people in the valley or whatever that might be.
Right.
I don't think they're not mutually exclusive even remotely.
What I would say to this is, now in your business you should have more than revenue goals. Like you should have goals for each department, and like we're all on the same page there. Don't just choose one revenue goal. That's the only goal we go after. But revenue for a business is the most obvious and most direct sign that you're doing your job properly. Because if you are really good at marketing, but you have terrible customer service, guess what? You won't hit revenue goals. If you have really great customer service, but you don't make the phones ring or you don't answer the phones well, guess what? You will not hit revenue goals. If you do really great marketing and you have really great customer service, but you don't take care of your team members, guess what? They'll leave and you won't hit revenue goals. Revenue is how we judge success. It's like a basketball game, right? Like basketball, there's so many inputs to basketball that you could be really successful at. But at the end of the day, if you score more points than the other team, that means all the other things you did was effective. And it doesn't matter how amazing your defense is. If you get, trounced by 30 points, you weren't doing your job properly.
And to add to that too, it's like you could be serving a bunch of customers, but if your revenue is low, potentially you're charging too much, and then it's just ultimately a hobby.
Or too little, or whatever.
Too little. Sorry, yes, too little, and then ultimately it's a hobby. You're not able to bring enough money home to your family. It's again
your team members. It's a dangerous place to be.
So it's not, again, mutually exclusive. Is just not how they should be looked at.
But do you worry that if let's say you have an entry-level employee who's watching the revenue goals and they start to do math in their heads now, like, okay, so there's this many people in the company, our revenue is 5 million, divide that by how many people, wow, I'm severely underpaid.
I don't worry about that kind of stuff.
You're not at all?
Never.
How come?
Never.
I believe in transparency.
I believe in transparency 100%, front to down, way more than most people. But the truth is, if that low-level employee came to me and goes, hey, I want to make more money, I love that conversation. Awesome. I would like you to make more money. Here's a few ways we could do it. Here's options. Here's where we could go. Here's what we could do. And I think this is another, I just kind of thought of this randomly, like we're talking about purpose-driven businesses. The most obvious, simplistic version of a purpose-driven business is a charity, right? Charity's their biggest, KPI, their success indicator is what? Donation amounts, revenue in, because they know for every dollar that comes in, they get to help so many families or so many kids or build so many houses or whatever, right? They're still revenue-based goals. It doesn't detract from the cause.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. And I also see where Zach is coming from. So um for me, I don't know, I think it was 8 or 9 years ago. And there's a lot of, let's call them talking heads in our industry, right?
Yes.
And they're all great and they all have their own little, niche and personality, and it's wonderful. Well, there's one that was talking about a new car that he bought, and this wasn't your regular sedan. This was a super super nice, over $100,000 vehicle, right?
Good for him.
It's awesome. It's amazing. And if that's what motivates him, I'm totally excited for him. But I realized in that moment that it's not what motivated me. And so I started thinking about what did motivate me, and it was a whole lot more about helping leaders grow. Right? It was a whole lot more about helping them and their people grow and become successful and become a bright spot in their community where they can actually affect it. And that's what's amazing about wealth is that you have the ability to do a lot of good in your community when you have that wealth and that influence. And so for me, it helped me realize that just the financial ladder wasn't enough for me. That I like to call it true wealth, which consists of four different things. It consists of a social aspect to goal setting. It consists of an intellectual aspect to goal setting, a physical aspect to goal setting, and then of course a financial aspect to goal setting. And so if you were to focus in on those four things, in fact, there's a fifth one, which is spiritual, right? For me, I'm a very faith-based person, and it's important to me. So I have goals in all five of those areas that I'm constantly looking at, working towards, because I just don't want to be done, in 10, 20 years or whenever it is I'm going to be done and have a bank full of money. I want to have made a difference, to be a change agent, somebody worth following. And so for me, goal setting is an intricate part of what I'm doing. Why? Because it helps me realize and remember on a regular basis what I really want to do with my life.
Gives you direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
And
think
I want to make a difference, So
I think most people do, but there's another side to this coin, right? Which is, now we're talking about revenue, and trust me, you need to be doing goals throughout your life on different subjects. I think it's a huge mistake to focus on revenue. But all of us are in a position where where revenue to a point is given, meaning like we know how to make money.
yeah.
If you're in a situation where you're not really making money, I know companies and not to work with us anymore, but certainly when they started, that they do millions of dollars in revenue, and the owners bring home 50 grand a year, and there's two of them working in the business, and they struggle to make end meets, and they almost got a business every in between season, every shoulder season, and like it's real easy to talk about living for a cause and doing so much more, but when you're worried about rent, it changes things. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't want to sound like conceited, and like I think they can come across, and I know none of us mean it this way, and I have this habit too. Like you get to a point in your life where money doesn't matter that much, and it's a maturity thing that gets you there. But ultimately, I wouldn't have hit that nearly as much or nearly as fast if I needed money. Um, so I think revenue is always part of the process, because honestly, almost every goal you'll have has some revenue or freedom element to it. And freedom costs money as well. I know that's weird to say, but it does. So I think these are not mutually exclusive. I think goal setting is incredibly important. Make sure you're writing them down. Make sure you share with people. Make sure you talk about it. Make sure you're looking at it regularly. Don't write it down once and put it in the bottom of a drawer and it sits there. You might as well not have written it. And there's all kinds of techniques. I know lots of people who do the card in their pocket. They literally write in a note card, keep in their pocket, check it every day. Whenever they change pants, they're touching it, seeing it. I know people who do random text reminders. I think that's a great way of doing it if you don't want to carry a card everywhere. It's as simple as this. I have on my key, I have a little coin on my key. So every time that I drive, basically, I have a coin that says whatever it takes, right? Which means to me, like, hey, we hit our goals, and we do within ethical, we do whatever it takes, right? To help people to get things done, to have success. And success isn't purely money driven. So I don't know, just thoughts out there. Don't feel, sometimes when people talk about goals, it feels like harping, because like, how am I going to focus on other goals when I'm still trying to feed my family consistently? Like, that's a terrible place to be. And if you're in that place, um, I'm sorry, that sucks. You can get out of it. Part of it's
Yeah,
by setting goals, and a lot of it's by driving towards those goals.
totally.
So,
And go ahead. Sorry, Morgan.
ladies first.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. I don't remember what I was going to say. I
Well,
forget.
it's okay.
No,
While you're thinking
Really good
about that, 2009, I think it was. It was a year after a business of mine went kaput, and it was such a fun time for me. Um, but I've been there, right? I've been without money, and during that same year, my son was diagnosed with autism, and and I went to a place called Autism Journeys, and they said, "Hey, you can give your son a chance at normal life for $3,500 a month." And of course, I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm going to rob a bank to give my son a chance at normal life." But during that time, I went to an event where Zig Ziglar spoke, and by this time he was well into his 80s. He had recently suffered a fall, lost his short-term memory, and one of the things that stood out to me, well, actually, there's two things. There's two things that stood out to me. One was is that when he was young, he heard a guy encouraging other people, and he realized it was something he wanted to do the rest of his life. And while I was, dirt broke, and heard those words, right, that it how it inspired Zig Ziglar to, to do what he has done in his lifetime. I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to spend my life encouraging people. It really spoke to me, right? And then the other thing was is that in order to get, and this is the second thing that I remember from Zig Ziglar's speech, is that in order to get what you want, you've got to help enough other people get what they want. And so as I was considering what I needed money to provide for my son's, therapy and all the services they needed so he could have a normal life. And in that moment, I realized that in order to do that, I've got to help enough people get what they want. And then, of course, the rest is history, where I found a way to help people in this industry that I love, and it's been an amazing ride. But yes, revenue goals are extremely important, and at least for me, setting additional goals, turning outward and serving other people has helped me get to where I am. In fact, until I had this perspective, I don't think I would ever be as successful as I am today. So let me just give you a couple of examples of some of the goals that I have, and you can take it or leave it. For example, I have a really cool Traeger in my backyard, and it's a great smoker. And I do a lot of smoked meat. I don't know if Zach remembers some of the smoked meat that I've done, but it's pretty good. And so what I do is when I go to Costco, I just buy an extra tri-tip or two. And when I do, why? Because the smoker's really big. There's enough room for more than one tri-tip, and my family's only going to eat one. So I might as well smoke a few more tri-tips. And so around the neighborhood, I reach out to them and say, "Hey, crazy thing. I cooked too much tri-tip. It's weird, but can I bring it over? Will you please take this off our hands?" And the intent is to build relationships around the neighborhood. COVID is a very difficult time to get to know the neighbors. But when you bring food, it changes everything. They're like, I don't care if you have a mask or not. And anyway, the tri-tip's really, really good. And they say great things about, me and my family and about the tri-tip and how amazing it was. And it's kind of a way to build relationships in the neighborhood. And that's one of my social goals is to be a neighbor that the people around me can count on to serve and to help and just to be a good neighbor. So that's just one of those goals. Another goal that I have is for my nephews and my nieces. I've got 6 brothers and sisters. I know what you're thinking, right? I know the same thing you've always thought, right? Brigham from Utah. Well, I have one mother. Knock it off. But my siblings are fantastic. They all have a lot of kids, and in 3 weeks, I'm doing a Spartan race in Vegas, and I sent out a text to all of my family members and said, any of your nieces or nephews that are over the age of 14, I will sponsor them at this Spartan race. And I had several of my brothers and sisters take advantage of this, and now we have like 20 of my relatives coming to the Spartan race to see their kids run in this really fun obstacle course race. And so my intention or my goal is to become the most influential uncle in my family. And I just want to make a difference. I want to help. And you're right, Josh, money is important. I wouldn't be able to do these things without money. But what's even more important is what you decide to do with it.
So Brigham, just because I think people will resonate with what's the term I'm looking for? It's like, it's not just work. What's the term I'm looking for? It's like, it's across various aspects. Holistic, correct.
Approach.
Yeah, brain fart, sorry. So a holistic approach to goal setting. What's the how? So is there a particular method you follow? What's that how for you?
Okay, so for me, and I like to do this every morning, and sometimes the habit isn't as strong as I'd like it to be, and I have to, forgive myself and start over again. But I call it the true wealth method, where I focus on financial goals, spiritual, and they're specific, right? Specific sentences of what I will do, specific action items that I will do in the financial realm, the spiritual realm, the intellectual realm, and the physical realm. That's 4. Did I say 5? You get my point, right? It's in several aspects of your life. And then I've got specific sentences. And if I were to just show you guys, I mean, you can't really see it on the podcast, but it's literally a page and a half of all the promises that I'm making to myself, where I have specific action items to just turn outward and serve and just become somebody worth following.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And I think, what I would say to listeners is, don't ever think goal setting is not for you. You may not have just found the method of goal setting that you enjoy or that's worked for you, but Jeannie, goal setting has been proven to make you a happier individual. It can significantly, because it gives you a sense of like purpose. You're working towards something. Growing, to feel like you're growing, is correlated with those people who live the happiest kind of lives. So all you got to do is set a goal and then start working toward it, and that's growth. 1% better. Imagine if you were 1% better in anything every single day. That 1% gathers steam pretty bloody quick. So goals are just important. I hope whoever's listening, and if you don't have goals, set them. And again, to Brigham's point, I think it's awesome not to just set business goals. Totally. Like, yeah, let's work on, especially what Josh was saying there, like if it's like hard to set goals if you're focused on just bringing enough money home to keep your family afloat. It's like, gosh, you could have a goal of, despite being in a funny position financially, how can I be the best dad I could possibly be, or the mom I could possibly be? How can I be a positive influence in my home? It doesn't have to be, it can be holistic, and I think it should be. And I love your approach to goal setting, Brigham. And there's
Beautiful.
silence.
Awesome.
I think that's it. That sums us up, right?
Yeah, set some goals. Come on.
Set some goals.
Any goals are better than none. Write them down, share them with people.
Do you want to throw any books, resources out to people that has really influenced everybody's thinking on goals, or what would set them off in a good direction?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've had any books that do it. I've certainly had a lot of public speakers and mentors and people teach me about goals. I don't know if I have a book necessarily.
I have a few that come to mind. Brigham, go ahead.
Yeah, Jason Hewitt, The Promise.
I'm gonna read that. That resonated with me for sure. I haven't read it. I like that. For me, the 2 books. One is the 8 Habits of Highly Successful People. The cool part about that is it makes you think about you at your funeral and who you wanted to be, and then you can like work backward to develop like set those goals so you'd ultimately would become that person. That's a cool way of thinking holistically. And another one is again, what is it? The Strangest Secret.
Oh
Great
yeah.
way of thinking about goals. Powerful book. It's like you can get it on YouTube for free. And I think you guys have heard me say this before,
It's
but
like 45 minutes. It's real simple, real short.
yeah. And again, I always do like to preface, like these books are ancient. They've been read by a lot of people, but for someone that you guys will know in the industry, Paul Kelly, he is the most successful contractor in the United States. He says that book is like a huge factor in what's allowed him accomplish what he has today. So it's a book that a fellow contractor has rolled out, and he's the fruits to show for it, you know.
I listen to that once a month. Every single month it pops up on my calendar, and I listen to it once a month.
When Josh found out that his dad read that and didn't tell him about it, he was, because Paul told me he read that before he told Josh.
Yeah,
he
I've
was
already.
so annoyed.
I've like this is so funny, but it's terrible, right? So like you know, she's doing like kind of mentorship with Paul, right? And he's my father. He's like my first mentor, right? And my best mentor. And he goes, I've read this book every month since I was like a kid. I read it like 20 times in a row the first time I got it. And I'm like, and I had already read it. And I had already read it several times. I'm like, how is this? I'm like 35. This is the first time I'm hearing this is the most influential book you've ever read. Like, that should have been one of the first ones I read, not like years in, right?
It's cool though when you read a book, and like I'd read it many times as well, but when you read a book and you know someone who is the fruits of rolling this stuff out, it's like, oh geez, I need to read this more. But yeah, that's some books on my end. Zach, anything to offer up?
Any autobiography by a person you admire, pretty much. I'm always really impressed with how people, when they write their autobiographies, talk about how they envision their future and set their goals. My most recent was a QB by Steve Young. Read his autobiography, and that one was really revealing because Steve Young struggled with intense anxiety. When he got his first professional football paycheck, he took it to a church leader in his church and handed him the check and said, I'm not worthy of this. I can't take this. And just had a complete mental breakdown, right? Like this, you can imagine this huge professional quarterback, just like, I'm not worthy. Yeah, I think autobiographies are fantastic because they help you see how to set goals. And they also help you see the human side of the people you admire. It's tough. I struggle with this personally. When I see people I really admire achieving great things, they seem like invincible, you know, like, well, of course they're going to achieve their goals because they're freaking perfect. You know, how can I possibly measure up to that? But autobiographies are really revealing and show you, oh, actually, this guy went through a lot. You know, there's a lot here that I can actually relate to, and it helps you see how maybe I can achieve goals too.
I love that. I actually think that is the most anxiety relieving concepts that I learned when I came to America. I met like lots of like famous, like really well-known people who seemed to have it all figured out, invincible, and they were so crazily imperfect that I was just like, this is amazing. You don't have to be perfect to be great. And it's just like biography. You get to see the human side. Nobody's perfect. Everybody's got quirks in their journey and quirks they got to work through to accomplish their goals or whatever. So yeah, actually, I never even thought about that.
I think that let's turn this to contractors too. I know, Brigham, you probably have this experience too. Like, I've visited so many businesses. Sometimes you visit incredibly successful, very large, very profitable, growing, good culture businesses. And you walk in and you're like, holy crap, they're doing so many things wrong. The cool part about our industry is you don't have to do everything really, really well. You just have to do a few key things really well. And that's more than enough. So I think that's fascinating too.
Totally true.
Totally true. We could make this will end up running into 2 podcasts if we don't cut it off. So thank you so much, guys. Hopefully that was helpful. Reach out if you're not setting goals. I literally am happy to have a call with you to make sure that you are. It'll change your life. And as is anybody else here. So always reach out. We're happy to help. Hopefully you guys found this helpful. Take care until next time. Stay busy. And Josh has got a message to tell you.
Go change the world.
There we go. Cheers, guys.
Thank you for listening to Lip Service for Contractors. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to leave us a review in the App Store and don't forget to share with your friends. Ideas are cheap. Implementation is what separates the winners from the watchers. Go out and implement these ideas. See you on the next episode of Lip Service for Contractors.